Mandy, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, it's always so good to be with you, Scott.
It's great to be with you. This is really interesting. I wanted to do some holiday stuff as in the United States where you lived for many years. Now you're back in your homeland, the land of scoundrels turned wonderful, right? I mean, you throw the folks down there, Australia, the great prison colony that became this wonderful.
Yeah, but when you kick out all the kind of marginal thinkers, the people who can't conform to the system, when you put them all in one country, then something interesting is going to happen. So, although that's kind of what happened with the United States too. So it went in a different direction.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's interesting. The marginal, when you take the people that are outsiders, the people that see things differently, people that process things differently, you do get an interesting result, right? I mean, I always think too that I love your accent, by the way. I always think, you have such a lovely voice and such a lovely accent, but in Australia, you don't have an accent. You're just
That's right.
Australian.
Yes, and when I lived in the States for many years, people would comment on my accent, and if I ever commented on their accent, being absolutely serious, they would laugh at me. And it was so striking to me to think some people think they don't have an accent. Like there is a neutral somewhere and everybody else has an accent.
There is no neutral.
There's no neutral. There's no normal when it comes to accents.
Yeah, I grew up in southern New Jersey, and so there's that. And then I spent so much formative time with people from New York and North Jersey and Long Island, and that probably a tinge of that got in my psyche, and so I find my accent is just weird and strange.
I like your accent.
I don't find it very. I think it's very unsophisticated, but that's fine.
No, I think
it's something. It's something. But you're right. There is no neutral, which is it's such an interesting thing to remind ourselves in all of life, right? We're all coming from somewhere.
Yeah, we all have lenses that we can be oblivious to. Yeah, and it's not until I moved to another country that I realized, all these expectations that I thought were true for everybody are not true for this whole nation of people. And it kind of shaped a third space in my brain of like all the other things I don't yet know that other people see or how other people view the world. So, yeah, it's kind of wonderful and humbling at the same time.
When you moved back to Australia, when you became an expatriate, what was the biggest adjustment? What had changed about you? Like what was American about you that you didn't even see until you were back?
Yeah. Aussies have this interesting dynamic, which I actually think is a remnant of colonial times, that is called tall poppy syndrome, which is that we are actually really kind of communal thinkers for a Western nation anyway. But if somebody tries to get above anybody else, if we perceive that they are thinking they're better than anyone else, then we want to cut them back down again. And so like Paul Hogan, who was in the Crocodile Dundee movies, we all thought, oh, one of ours made it over there. He's just a working class guy and he made it into American movies. Good for him. But as soon as he left his just ordinary wife for the movie star, it was like, okay, we don't want anything to do with him anymore. And that's, in a way, it's an interesting dynamic because it keeps us all connected to one another, but it also, this is where it's different from American culture. It also makes people feel like, who am I to try anything new? Who am I to excel or put myself forward for anything? And that was one of the things that was hardest to get used to when I first moved to the States, because people would be like, I'm good at this. And I'd be like, wow. But it also means people are willing to try things and be excellent and whatever. So there's the good and bad on both sides of those dynamics. But that was the thing that I think was a tricky thing to adjust back to.
Yeah, the United States is very individualistic, right? When you said that about the tall puppy syndrome, I think of this. I once heard that you think of this American saying is that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? That if you complain, you raise your hand, you stand up, you get attention. And the Chinese analog is the head that looks down doesn't get hit, right? So you imagine a bunch of peasants all looking down, right? And then the Confucian or authoritarian leader doesn't hit you then, right? So it's this.
Yeah, that's similar to the tall poppy. And it's not a tall puppy, it's a tall poppy.
Like poppy
seed. Flower. Like the flower, yeah.
Like a flower.
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from, but yeah. And it can actually be a false kind of humility that keeps people from saying, hey, maybe I could be good at this or learn to do this or lead in some way. So anyway, that's been an interesting dynamic to adjust to.
So here's why I wanted to have you back on the show. Great. Our last conversation I really enjoyed too. I really enjoyed your last book. I recommended it to many, many friends. So you've been in America for years during the holiday season and been a minister during the holiday season and dealt with people in the American holiday season, which starts earlier and earlier, right? I mean, it seems like it almost starts after Halloween or something, right? Like in October, holiday lights start going on and people have parties and dinners and traveling, and it's like nonstop through to New Year's. And it's just this time when people eat too much, drink too much, but they're not having fun. It seems like eating and drinking too much. I just had a fitness coach, a friend. She came on to talk about health and stuff for the holidays. A political figure is going to come on to talk about like political relationships at the holidays. I wanted to talk to you about finding grace in the holiday season, because you are one of the most grounded people I know. And you are one of the most childlike people I know. Not childish, childlike. I find that you approach life present, right? Kids are ever present, right? They're not thinking too much about the past. They're not thinking too much about the future. They're actually present. And I think this is what people don't feel in the holidays. I found this study the other day that 63% of young adults in the United States, we're talking about ages 18 to 34, and 53% of parents have all considered leaving the United States just due to the general state of the nation. This is pre-election too. Half of all adults in the United States, this is a poll's only a couple months old, half of all adults report signs of loneliness. While 69% last year, 69%, 7 in 10 adults in the United States say they needed more emotional support than they received. And 75% of Americans are more stressed about the country's future than before, with political division tied to isolations, physical symptoms, and daily struggles. So this is just, I mean, America, it strikes me right now as a pressure cooker. People are chronically anxious, they're stressed, they're depressed. And then the holiday season, which is supposed to be a time of festivity and renewal, I don't think for most people is anything like that. I think it becomes very stressful. Mandy, how do you stay grounded in the holidays? Or do you stay grounded? And why do you think people, I mean, you've dealt with people as a minister and trying to speak peace to their lives. Like, what is it? Why are people such a mess at the holidays?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we say happy this and merry that, and it's kind of about a lot of pressure, like to feel something. You can choose to celebrate, to have a gathering or to think about something. You can't force feelings. And when there's a lot of stuff going on in your personal life and in the world, you can't just suddenly say, okay, now I feel happy. And if I'm not feeling it, then I'm just going to eat a bunch of food or drink a bunch of alcohol or whatever that makes me try to cram this happy in between the crises, And I think for me, it's just not having compassion on yourself, that there are realities that you're facing and that the whole world is facing that are real, and we can't force ourselves to be happy in that, and we can't control so much of that. And there's a freedom somehow in embracing what we can't control. There's a beautiful article in The Atlantic that I was just reading by Arthur C. Brooks, To Get Happier, Make Yourself Smaller. And he ends it by saying, which is the opposite of what we actually normally try to do to be happy, right? We try to get more control and feel more important. And he ends it, which it's kind of counterintuitive, but I'm just trying to get to the end of the article here. Come on, give me the end of the article here. I don't want the ads. Okay. He says, so relax into the reality of your cosmic smallness. The plain truth is that you are a speck on a speck, but you're a lovely little speck and beloved by a few other specks. That's a good life.
Wow.
So you can read the whole article to sink more into the speck stuff. But I think a big part of it for me is embracing the things we can't control and our smallness, and lamenting. Like, the beautiful thing about being a minister at Christmas time is that a lot of my work is not about baking and shopping and whatever people do. It's walking people through the season of Advent, which I didn't actually grow up with, but in the tradition I'm in, we do Advent, which is a season that starts this week actually. And it's a season of kind of acknowledging the process of waiting for Jesus, that for centuries people longed for a promised one to come, and waiting through pain, waiting through misery, waiting through suffering. And then Christians believe that promise was fulfilled in Jesus, but now we wait for him to come back. We wait for him to make things right again. And so much of our life is in this unrequited, unresolved, liminal. All of life is liminal space, right? Of yes, enjoying some things, but also noticing everything that isn't finished and that isn't as it should be. And so Advent is a month or so every year where it actually gives, it's so beautiful to have permission to say it's okay. And that's the opposite of what I think the pressure that we usually feel in advertising and whatever around us at this holiday season is that permission to just lament what is broken and share what is frustrating and grieve what we need to grieve, and somehow also have capacity to embrace what is beautiful. You know, you say that I seem really grounded. I think that I've had to learn some practices because of seasons of depression and anxiety myself. So it's not just like this comes easily to me, but I remember a particular season, because for me, depression has always looked like being outside of the movie of my life. Like I'm a critic of the movie. I'm not just in the movie. And there's a kind of torment that comes from just constantly assessing your life. Like I'm looking from outside of it and I'm saying, well, if I could just fix this thing and if I could just control that thing, then my life would be better. And it's almost becomes this obsession of trying to get myself out of depression by making my life what it should be. And I remember one day I was in that kind of a dark place, and I was waiting for my kids to go to school. They were almost ready, and I was standing in the kitchen to give them their lunch boxes as they zoomed past me to the car to drive to school. And so I'm standing there in my pajamas with my kids' lunch boxes in my hands and doing that, like, what's the state going to hold, and how can I survive it? And I wish my life was like this. And while I was waiting, there was a book on the table that I was reading for a book club, and it was kind of a journal style book. And I just thought, I'll just read a page of this while I'm waiting. And the book said, I'm sitting in a cafe and I've just had a haircut. My hair feels a bit too short. And there's a purple flower on the table beside me. What's happening around you? And I stopped to think, yeah, what is happening around me? And I almost heard this sound of like, where I'm like, I've been floating in the clouds looking down at my life, and I'm just going to be in my body right now. And I suddenly was like, I'm in my kitchen waiting, and I'm grateful that I have food in these lunch boxes to give to these kids. The fridge is humming beside me, and actually I really need to go to the bathroom, so like I just was in my body, and I decided, I promised myself, I can't fix all the things that I need to fix in the world and in my life. I'm just going to pay attention to my senses, because even though my heart was broken and my mind was really tired, my senses were fine. Like they were, and I just wasn't listening to them. So every time I drank my tea in the morning, I was like, "Oh, a warm cup of tea is so good." Every time I had a shower, I just chose to say, I didn't have to even force gratitude. Like I didn't say, and then you have to make sure you feel these feelings. I just was like, oh my goodness, warm water feels so good.
What stopped you before that? Before, when you were not present to
Yeah.
yourself, right? When you weren't cognizant of how of warm the tea was or soothing the shower was. What was blocking that? What was keeping you not present in the
Yeah,
moment?
yeah. I think, James K. A. Smith talks about secular liturgies, that we're just absorbed in this world that we're not even aware of. And so much of our culture is shaped by consumerism. And I'm pretty sure there are people in every marketing firm. Sorry if there are marketing people out there. I'm sure most of you are doing wonderful things. But I get the feeling there are people in marketing firms that are specifically like encouraging discontent. Like
Yes.
most
Yeah. Yeah.
marketing is based on your body's not young enough, fit enough, small enough, whatever, big enough, whatever. Your life isn't perfect enough. Your career isn't fantastic enough. Your finances, your house, your kids. Like there's some problem, like you better fix it. Everyone else has figured it out. What's wrong with you? Just buy this product. And so it's just good, I think, to name this is the water we swim in, that is a culture of discontent, in spite of the fact that we are the wealthiest people in the history of humanity. You know, I read a book that said we live better than most royalty of past times. We have access, like I could literally reach out to my bag right there and get pain medication. You know, that probably was not accessible in only a few generations ago to the wealthiest people in the world. I can eat a piece of toast with peanut butter on it, and those ingredients have come from all over the
You get
place.
strawberries any time of the year, right? I
That's
mean, you
right.
just get, you
And
just can get, yeah, it's
spices from
amazing.
all over
Yeah,
the world. And
yeah.
to just think like you can just sit there, and I found this is the switch that I noticed, like nothing changed in my life. I was eating the same peanut butter toast and cup of tea every morning, and suddenly to stop and think like somebody grew these tea leaves in like Sri Lanka or somewhere. I don't even know where my tea leaves come from, but somebody went to the trouble of planting this plant, harvesting it, drying it, packaging it, bringing it across the world for me. Somebody else, thankfully, I have a husband who makes me a cup of tea every morning. Somebody else made that. Someone figured out how tea tastes if you put it in hot water. And then that's not even counting the cow, the person who raised the cow and milked the cow. And for $2, I can buy milk to put in my tea, in spite of all these miracles that allowed all these things to be possible just for one cup of tea. That's not thinking about where the water came from or who created the kettle that boiled the water, and somebody handmade a little tea cozy that I put on my teapot. And like, what a miracle, you know, that we're so, I remember too around that time watching a documentary called The Privileged Planet, which I think is about 20 years old now, but it's available now on YouTube, and maybe some of the science is old. It's I think a like intelligent design kind of a thing. It's not doesn't have some of the wonky kind of way that some Christians talk about creation science or whatever, but it just was saying, building up one by one the different factors that are necessary for this planet to be inhabitable. I think there were 23 different factors, that some number like that. I can't remember, it's been a while. But it was like one at a time, like the angle of the axis of the earth, and how close we are to the sun, and the fact that we have this moon, and all of these things, the plate tectonics, the atmosphere. Every time it added a new element, it said, and what is the chance that one planet would have both of those things, or all three of those things, or all four or five or six of those things? And it was like 1 in a squillion that one planet would have all of those dynamics that make it so beautiful. And I mean, it made me suddenly see this, we're just going around the universe on this big comfy couch, just gorgeous place that we live compared to all the planets in the world. And that just changes your whole worldview. Instead of thinking like, I wish my job were better, you know, while you're munching on your peanut butter toast and cup of tea, to think like, there are not asteroids currently showering me. You know, there is not poisonous toxic gas. There is beautiful oxygen to breathe. And so it
So
just
you're talking at a
changed.
very base level. Like, I mean, on some
Yeah.
level, you're
Yeah.
saying there's always a capacity to have a little bit of gratitude.
Yeah. And
Things could.
I don't force myself to feel something, although it often comes, to just change my perspective. And it's actually, I think this is what scripture does too, that there's that cycle, whether we're actually depressed or not, or we're just obsessed with our own happiness. There's that cycle of, I'll only be happy if I get this, or if this can change, or if this person isn't in the White House, or whatever. And that kind of keeps you in this loop that you're never going to be able to control and fix all those things. And it makes our happiness incredibly fragile. And scripture and, you know, thinking in a different way actually shifts you to just shift your way of seeing, shift your imagination to a different possibility. That is what we actually need. And it reminds me of, in the book of Job, you know, the guy, Job, is having a really intense time of suffering, and all of his friends are kind of trying to answer his problem and say, you're suffering because you are a bad person, or you're suffering because of this. And there's this torment of trying to figure out life. And finally, it's one of my favorite passages in scripture. God steps in. He does not answer the questions. He is like, have you seen the ostrich? Do you know how I made the snow? You know, and there's like
The
pages.
Leviathan, right? There's that great phrase, the Leviathan.
Like, tell me if you know how I made these things. And it just switches your perspective. Something else that listeners might want to check out is David Steindl-Rast. He's a monastic. I'm not sure what his official title is, but he created a video that I think is called A Good Day. It's a grateful day with Brother David Steindl-Rast. He has a whole organization called gratefulness.org. And it's just a 5-minute meditation that says, you think this is just another day of your life? Let's look at it in a different way. And he does unpack, like, you have water to drink and you have a body to enjoy, this world that you're a part of. And it's a beautiful way to just shift. Because I think that's what we're talking about here. Is not like you can be happy if you have the best party at Christmas or in the holidays, whatever holidays you're celebrating. But shifting our perspective. And it doesn't mean being in denial or living in a dreamland and pretending everything's rosy. It's that Advent capacity that I was talking about earlier of somehow being able to have space for all of the suffering that we experience and that the world is in, all of the things that aren't what we would like. And at the same time, holding the possibility that there is such beauty and goodness that can coexist at the same time. It's really stretching to our hearts and our imaginations.
For people that are listening or watching and they're in this season of life, like right now, they're where nothing looks everything looks gray. They've got malaise colored gray glasses on.
Yeah, which I don't want to make light of in any way. I hope I'm not sounding
because you've lived it. I mean, you're talking from your own lived experience, right? I'm wondering how long did it take you to shift your perspective, right? I mean, because you sort of narrated the way, like, okay, there was this day, but I mean, it takes time, right, to shift, right? I mean, when you're stuck, you usually don't. I mean, some people do get unstuck immediately. That happens for people, right? But I mean, I think most people, when you're stuck in life, when you're in a malaise-ridden place, when you're in a place where you feel where joy has gone away, or you just feel locked and trapped, and so you didn't just get in there, and you don't just get out of it, right? I mean, so how do you wade through it? How did you? I mean, how did you? What kind of timetable was that for you to experience things?
Yeah.
In ways that gave you some more wholeness and hope.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I could shift at least that part of me every day that said, I'm going to pay attention to my cup of tea. I'm going to pay attention to my shower. I'm going to let the birds interrupt me. That was another thing that I chose to do, that, they're making sounds all around us that are like, hello, we're right here. I'm going to let my pet and my kids interrupt me. I'm going to, there were some like little liturgies that I chose every day that I could do every day. And in a way, it did actually save me, but I didn't even care about the timeline as much anymore. Because I realized that part of depression also for me is there's a part of me that's just so miserable and so exhausted. And then there's this other part of me that's like, hurry up, come on, we don't have time for this. How long are you going to be? Come on, get over it, And I think what it did was it was just like, just zip it to that part of me, It was like, we don't need this extra pressure to get on with it. And so then my attention could just be in the part that was like, needed to be kind to itself and to say, it is a reality that I'm tired right now. And I don't need that extra hurry up and get over it thing. But yeah, I think over the course of a month or two, putting my attention as much as like not every second of the day, but every day I tried to remember these are my rhythms: tea time, shower time, go for a walk and be in nature, stand in the grass barefoot. Like those are totally in our control, or at least some of them. And somehow I didn't even notice when I found myself emerging back into the world and more capable to confront the challenges. And please, I don't know how other people suffer. I don't know what people are experiencing. I don't want to be diagnosing other people or prescribing things, but I can just share my experience. And I know a few friends. I know one friend who watching birds did bring her out of depression because it, I'm sure there was medication and other practices too, but she says that letting herself be interrupted by birds, and she's an artist, she would draw them every day. It just gave her a tendance to things.
You know, it strikes me that when we're in the holiday seasons, at least in the States, I don't know what it's like in Australia, because we have Thanksgiving, and which American Thanksgiving comes in November. And again, and we have Black Friday, right? Which is the day everybody goes in the consumeristic orgy,
The
everything goes
high
on sale.
holiday.
Yeah, that's it. Because allegedly, this is when most of the retail stores go into the black for the year. So it's this big economic boom for them. But I think about how often you see someone and you maybe there's someone you're fond of or something, but you don't see them regularly, and you're like, oh, we should get together. Oh, after the holidays. And when people say that, it sounds agonized. Like the holidays don't sound like these festive time where, oh my gosh, I'm going to eat, drink, be merry. I'm going to see people. I'm going to make more times for relationship. We're going to have more days off. We're going to have parties. It almost seems like that's the worst part of the year to people. That there's this burden lifted off them that oh, we're going into the holidays. I mean, I wonder how to reframe that so that you see possibilities rather than just these perilous, like this time of just confinement and stress. I wonder why do people see this as such a rat race time?
Yeah, maybe we have a sense of what we're supposed to do. You know, like sometimes when we travel, when my husband and I first started traveling, we'd be like, well, people are going to expect us to see the Eiffel Tower, so we better go. You know, it can be that way in the holidays too. And so instead we were like, well, why don't we just sit in this cafe and watch Paris walk past us? You know, I mean, that's not the only thing we did, obviously, but to be able to give yourself permission to be like, well, I look like a loser because I'm at home in my pajamas on a Saturday night, but you know what? I actually kind of like that. And here's something that I've learned. I probably shouldn't tell you my secret, but you can say to people, I have plans, and nobody has to know that those plans are to be at home in your pajamas.
Exactly.
So Eugene Peterson, one of my heroes, says, you get to your calendar first before everybody else does, and nobody else sees your calendar. And it's okay to say, I think he says, my calendar won't allow it. So maybe get in first and decide the people that you really need to see, either because you want to bless them or because they're a blessing to you. The people that, the things that you want to do that would be life-giving, and the ways maybe that you can serve. You know, that's actually, selfishly speaking, giving to somebody else is one of the most beautiful blessings. And be willing to say no to some of the other things, and sleep and hydration and being in nature and being with people who care about you and finding something beautiful.
You said something really interesting, what you want, right? And I think you've written a lot about childlikeness, right? Being present to the world. And some of your writing has really spoken to me over the years on that stuff. But I think this is a challenge. Right? So many people aren't present to what they want. If you ask people what they want, which is different from a child, right? You ask a child what they want, they know, right? I mean, they're usually not as guile-ridden, right? We have these capacities to lose ourselves, to lose what we want, to tell ourselves we should want what others want us to want,
Right.
or what culture wants us to want. And that's really interesting to looking at your calendar and thinking, because I think don't you think for a lot of people that would be challenging to just sit and think about what they actually want?
Yeah. And I heard myself saying that, and I realized that sounds really selfish. But yeah, it's somehow connected to what you need and what is good. And so, yeah, maybe before you even say, what do I want? You have to think about, why do you want those things? And is there a way that those things are helping you be more whole, helping you be more present, helping you serve other people? Yeah, I think we're so busy year round that we don't even have the time to be conscious of that.
Yeah, self-reflect, that being present. I mean, I think, again, this is one of the reasons I enjoy talking with you, because I think more than many people I know, you cultivate this. You seem to have been on a journey for as long as I've known you of increased self-awareness. When I talk to you, you often tell stories of coming to realizations, self-realizations that I think actually seem to make you more free. But I think that's the thing. I think it's very challenging, right? I mean, because most people are busy and don't know how to befriend themselves, right? I mean, they don't know how to
That's a nice way.
they don't know how to be kind to themselves, right? And so
Yeah.
it just strikes me as such a hard thing. And you've written it and given a life to this kind of inner life. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
interesting to me.
I think in a way I'm in a line of work where you can't really phone it in. I mean, you can try for a little while, but it's not going to work long. Like I can't just perform because who I am is going to be revealed in what I do because of the nature of my work. And so part of my task to be truly present with people, it's not the kind of there are workplaces where you can actually bite people's head off and still be seen as successful in your work. That's not going to last very long for me as a minister. So it's actually been like it's required me to attend to the things that I'm carrying in order to not dump them on other people. But it's brought me, I think honestly what you're seeing is what comes from surrendering to and being beyond myself, which I realize is kind of an oxymoron because we think that to be happy is to be in control. And this is somewhat what the Atlantic article that I mentioned earlier is talking about. One of the points I think that he makes is there's 3 points, I think. And one of them is I'm just kind of seek the divine, the loss of self through communion with the divine. It's counterintuitive to think I'm going to find my true self by giving myself away. But every single time that I've confronted a situation where I don't know who I am or I'm really suffering, to go to a being who you believe made you and knows you more than you know yourself and to say, tell me who I am, tell me what you have for me, tell me what you're calling me to do. I think that's the fundamental practice that's helped me become whatever it is you're describing, Scott, is not because I'm so clever or so spiritual or so whatever, well adjusted. It's the daily practice of saying, here's what I want. I want to look successful. I want to be in control. I want to know where this is all headed. I want people to like me, and to just bring all that to God and say, and who do you say I am? What do you say about me? And it's a very strange thing to try to embrace something like that in contrast to my own feelings and my own assessment. But it's a part of what I was saying earlier about, I think it's the macro version of what I said earlier about shifting imagination. I was just mostly talking about that in terms of gratitude and paying attention to my senses, but in all of life to be willing to open our interpretation of the world and ourselves to an imagination that's much bigger than our own is probably what's coming out in the way that you're describing.
Now, you live in one of the most secular countries in the world,
Mm,
in Australia. I mean, I live in a pretty secular part of the United States. I mean, I live on the coasts, but even
yeah.
on the coasts, you all are way more advanced in the secularization journey than we are. For people that are listening or watching or whatever, that this sounds intriguing, right? That they would like some transcendence in their life, but they have, I mean,
Mm,
religion is fallen on some hard times in places like Australia,
yeah. Yeah.
UK or Western Europe or the coasts of the United States, where people are so cynical about religion
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and a lot of people have been wounded by religious institutions. So how do you, for people that feel like they're on the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about God and transcendence and this being, how do they get in? I mean, how do they
Mm,
how do because you've helped people through this. I mean,
yeah.
you've been a minister and things like this. How do you invite
Yeah.
people into something that may be really intimidating and hard for them
Oh,
because of their own story?
absolutely. Yeah. And it's good to distinguish, like, I see all the abuses in organized religion, and I've been I don't want to say a victim, but I'm a survivor of some of those myself. I don't in any way need people to think that the institution of religion is good or entirely good. There's also at the same time some of the most benevolent, most of the justice movements and benevolence movements around the world are motivated by faith at the same time. So setting aside the institution, the organized religion side of it, with all of its pros and cons. Yeah, I think you're asking one of the biggest questions of the universe. The point is not to get into the institution, but embracing the possibility that if there is a being beyond our own selves, that being is not so far. That being is here, and the point is not making our way to that being. But in Christian belief, we believe that God came all the way to meet us, that God seeks us, and that God will not coerce, will not force. Jesus says, "Here I am. Will you see it? Will you hear me?" And so it's similar again on a macro level to what we were talking about earlier about paying attention, is to say, am I willing to embrace the possibility that there is a being already all around me, maybe even who created me, who is waiting for me to give my attention and to be open. And I think the most spiritual thing is just that openness. One of my hardest things in my work is just helping people do the very scary work of saying, I'm open to that possibility. And I get it. It's terrifying.
So even if they're struggling, maybe act like it could be true. Like give yourself like put the lens
That's
on.
a
I'm gonna
great way
try.
to put it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like fake it till you make it. Like give this story a shot. Live inside this story.
I love that. Yes. Most of the best learning in my life, spiritually speaking, has happened when I've said, I don't believe in abundance, but how would I live if I did? If I really believe there is a God of abundance who can provide, how would I live if I really believed that? And I asked my whole congregation that one time, and a couple said, if we believed in God's abundance, we would set up an Airbnb in our house and just be hospitable to any stranger who needs a place to stay. And they did that for a year as an experiment. And at the end of the year, they were like, yeah, we see God's abundance. It was really uncomfortable to have people in our house. But so I think the same, yeah, you're absolutely right, that to ask, how would I live if I really believed there was a God who was good and who loved me? And
I love that
do
story.
that.
I love that story just as a practical story because I think so often at the holidays we feel like objects, not subjects. We feel like we're being acted upon, not actors, right? We feel passive, not like we have agency. We feel like we're in the rat race, right? It's just one damn thing after another. And I think what you're saying here is, first off, the calendar thing is great. That you have really, you can shape your time more than you think. Now, again, all of us have constraints. No one's totally free.
Yeah, of course.
But we're often less constrained than we think we are.
Yeah, and what do we do with the time we do have control over?
And that I think that thing about an Airbnb, like that's such an imaginative possibility.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think there's probably, again, more. I mean, none of us, we all have constraints, but there's probably things that we can imagine if we just made the space to do it, right? To do a little, like
Right.
what could be a little different, or what could give me some fullness or some adventure or some peace, and just actually taking the time, to have some ownership over that.
Yeah, and the culture tells us if you would be happier if you just got more of this or had more of that experience. And I remember taking my daughter one Christmas, because kids are kind of trained. I noticed like the liturgy I shaped every Christmas of, I've got a list of things to do. I've got to buy gifts for everybody. So the first thing I would do when Christmas was coming was ask the kids what they want for Christmas, which is kind of discipling them, shaping them in this liturgy of first thing we do when Christmas is coming is think about what we want, And I remember the year when I took my daughter shopping instead to buy gifts to give to kids in need. There was a particular mission in the city that was helping with families who's had a parent in prison, I think. And so I took my daughter and she got to spend some of her own money and I added to it as well. And she had the best time. It was more fun than when she took money to shop, to buy with her birthday present money or something to go shop and choose something for herself. We spent 45 minutes at Target and it was so much fun to be like, I wonder if they'd like this and I wonder if they'd like that. And as adults, we forget what a joy it is to be generous and to think, because we all want to feel like we have something that we contribute to the world. And so much of the time that we have time off, so to speak, in the holidays is like, I just need to shove as much of my own self-indulgence into this time as possible, and somehow it's never really good enough. It's not what we really needed.
That's a great image, though, to shove the self-indulgence, right? But that captures it, right? It's almost like you feel this pressure. I'm gonna have a good holiday. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna, there's this anxiety and pressure that comes from these perceived expectations, and all of this kind of knocks. I heard this quote today. Oh gosh, from Kierkegaard. This is gonna stick with me for a while. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom.
Mm.
And the point that the person who read the quote mentioned the quote was making is that we have all this freedom in the West, post industrial society, and we have all this wealth, as you were saying before, and yet we've given up some of the anchors of community and faith and tradition and other things that in pre-modern society had, and people were certainly less free, and there were many things. I wouldn't want to go back to that, but that dizziness, that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. The people walking around and having to live and make all these consumer choices and make all these choices about your own story and make all these choices about what's important and make all these choices.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's dizzying, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's psychologically to have all that pressure and all those choices and to make your way in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's something I want to read, but I feel like it's kind of a culminating thing. Are we coming close to the end of the?
You can let's culminate
it seems like the right time for
Let's
this.
culminate it. Let's culminate it.
Sounds inappropriate, actually.
That's consummate. We didn't say culminate.
Yes,
It's different than consummate.
Culminate. All right, so this is from a novel called Chasing Windmills by Catherine Ryan Hyde, who I think also wrote Pay It Forward. But anyway, I wrote this down. It's been on my wall for decades, ever since I read this. And it's 2 paragraphs from this novel, so bear with me. But I just love this image. There's 2 characters talking. The first character says, "If I was unhappy like you are now, here's what I'd do. Now just listen and try to take this in. Might not make much sense when it first hits your ears. When life just cuts me to ribbons and bloodies me and knocks me down, I go out of doors into nature. Now that's going to be hard for you where you live. If you could get to the ocean, that would be great, but I don't guess you can. But even the stars are good enough, except I suppose you don't see many stars in the city because the city lights wash them out. But I guess you see some, don't you? And even if you don't, there's the moon. The moon will do. See, you're looking for something that's not man-made, and you won't get it indoors. Everything indoors we invented. No bigger powers involved. But we didn't make the stars nor the moon, or trees or oceans or rivers, and we never could. Never will. That's how come something big is at work. So look at that proof of something big. Breathe it in. And then here's what you say. You say, thank you for my life. I just sat there, slumped on the couch, confused. The kettle started to whistle and she got up to tend to it. Why? Why would you say that if you're so miserable? That's exactly why. Because you're miserable. It's like if you love somebody. When they hurt you or let you down, you let them know you still love them. That's called unconditional love. Anybody can love somebody when they're making you happy. That requires no special talent. That's also how most people do it. But when you get a little wiser, you got to love somebody with all their faults. So if you can do that with a person, what about your own life? This is like unconditional love for your own life.
Mandy, I am grateful for your life. It's great to be your friend and to talk with you. Thank you so much.
It's so good to talk to you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for a life attentively lived, and for spending some time sharing that with me and my
There
listeners.
is goodness to be found when we pay attention.
Amen. Thanks so much, Mandy.
Bless you.